She walked in to be witnessed. She walked out as the woman the camera refused to admit was there. 72 seconds. That's all Netflix needed. One slow pan across Celebrity Row, one announcer rolling through names of Hall of Famers and Hollywood royalty, and then a gap. A silence, so loud it dressed itself up as sound. Right where Claressa Shields was sitting. Right where she expected her coronation. Right where the universe handed her an empty microphone instead. And the wildest part? Netflix didn't even have to insult her. They erased her. Politely. Surgically. On camera. In front of millions. And that erasure is louder than any diss track, any subliminal tweet, any Instagram story she's been spray painting her relevance onto for the last 12 months. But before we get into who got skipped, who got crowned, and who got caught flying across the country chasing somebody's husband instead of showing up to her own paid gig in Atlanta, you need to understand something. This wasn't a snub. This was a memo. And the memo went out to the entire boxing industry the second that camera moved. Let me show you exactly what just happened, because once you see the layers, you can't unsee them. Start with geography. Claressa was supposed to be in Atlanta. Not maybe. Not thinking about it. She had a full press rollout already burning through the city. Local radio. Podcast hits. Sit-downs with Atlanta tastemakers. She stood in front of microphones, multiple microphones, and told an entire city she'd be there for Win Records, for Selita Promotions, for Cat Asia, for Detri, for young Ruben, whose prom send-off was the centerpiece of the weekend. A kid. A family moment. A community milestone. A loyalty test signed in front of witnesses. She failed every line of it. While Atlanta was setting up the chairs, Claressa was on a westbound flight. No fight on the card. No commentary booth. No corner work. No paycheck. No reason. Just a seat, a phone, and a married man on her arm. Read that again. A married man. On her arm. At a Netflix-televised event. The kind of optics a publicist would die before approving. And here's the part that should freeze you. Because Claressa wants the world to believe she's booked and busy. A global brand. A calendar so heavy she can barely breathe. But she can hop a flight to LA for an event that pays her nothing, promotes nothing of hers, and features none of her work. Yet she cannot keep a paid commitment in a city that was literally rolling out a red carpet for her arrival. That's not a scheduling conflict. That's a confession. Because nothing, and I mean nothing, yanks a woman off her own promotional run and onto another woman's misery flight except infatuation with a man who legally belongs to someone else. There is no agent on earth who books a client out of paid press and into unpaid voyeurism. There is no manager alive who says, skip Atlanta, skip the radio, skip the family event, skip the Win Records dinner, and go sit in a row where Netflix won't even acknowledge you exist. That decision wasn't professional. That decision was personal. That decision was the kind a woman makes when her identity has been quietly outsourced to a man who already has a wife at home. And the universe was watching. Because the same night Claressa walked into that arena thinking she was making a statement, Netflix made one back. A louder one. A meaner one. A permanent one. Now here's where it gets surgical. The Celebrity Row segment dropped and the camera began its parade. Michael Irvin, Hall of Famer, NFL royalty, Cowboys legend, got the shine. Tommy Lee, rock and roll immortal, got the shine. Carmen Electra, pop culture institution, got the shine. Jake Paul, the man whose face built the entire MVP promotions empire, got the shine. WNBA superstars. NFL athletes. Hollywood faces. Every single one, name, title, accolade, light. And then, with the precision of a scalpel, the lens landed on Alicia Baumgardner. Undisputed champion, the woman MVP is openly grooming as the new face of women's combat, and gave her the full red carpet introduction. Name. Title. Belts. Spotlight. Then the camera did something extraordinary. It kept moving. Right past Claressa. Right past Ray's husband. Like the row had a vacancy in it. Like those two seats were occupied by nobody worth naming. Like a woman who calls herself the greatest of all time was less televisable than the air between two recognized faces. That wasn't an oversight. Networks don't have oversights. Directors of Celebrity Row segments do not accidentally skip the loudest mouth in women's boxing. That was a decision. That was a memo. That was a phone call somewhere upstairs that said one quiet sentence. She is not our story tonight. Move the camera.
Let me sit with that.
Because adversaries fight you. Dismissers archive you. And tonight, MVP didn't even need to throw a punch. They reached over, opened the cabinet, and filed Claressa under no longer relevant to our growth strategy. Now here's the brutal math her team needs to do before sunrise. Alicia Baumgardner, yes, the same Alicia that Claressa has been subliminally swiping at for months, fulfilled her MVP obligations and still appeared at this event. 2 events.
Same week.
0 excuses. Alicia showed up where she was scheduled, then showed up where she was wanted. That is how a professional gets crowned. Meanwhile, Claressa, who is no longer aligned with MVP, who is supposedly building her own thing with Win Records and Selita Promotions, couldn't even handle her one obligation in Atlanta. She skipped her own house to crash someone else's party. And the party didn't even let her through the velvet rope on camera. You know how I know that hurt her? Because she did the thing she always does when humiliation closes in. She yanked her phone out and started filming. Not the fight. Not Ronda Rousey's MMA return. Not the bloodbath of a co-main event that turned the canvas into a crime scene.
No.
She filmed proof of presence. Proof that she was there. Proof that she breathed the same air as celebrities Netflix refused to introduce her alongside. Because if the network won't validate her, she will validate herself, frame by desperate frame. That is the behavior of a woman whose stock is sliding in real time. That is the behavior of a woman who used to walk into rooms and command them, who now walks into rooms and has to document herself just to prove she's still solid matter and not a hologram. Now stop. Rewind. Because I want you to picture the moment she realized.
Picture her sitting in that seat.
Hearing the announcer roll. Hearing Michael Irvin's name. Hearing Tommy Lee's name. Hearing Carmen Electra. Hearing Jake Paul. Hearing Alicia. Hearing silence. Then more names. Then more names. Then the camera moving on. Picture the exact second her smile froze. Picture her glancing sideways to see if anyone in her row noticed. Picture the heat climbing up the back of her neck. That's the moment a public figure's brain begins to fracture in real time. That's the moment the costume slips. And that is the moment you saw, even if you didn't realize you were seeing it, when she pulled out her phone and started filming again. And listen carefully here, because this next part is where the entire narrative she's been selling collapses under its own weight. The man beside her, let's not pretend he was there for the sport. He was there because she was there. Because his entire economic model right now is showing up where the cameras are, attached to the arm of a woman whose checking account is doing the heavy lifting his career never did. Ray's husband, the eternal plus one, the perpetual passenger. The man whose only verifiable skill is identifying a successful black woman and barnacling himself to her brand until she sinks under the weight of carrying him. He didn't fly to Atlanta. Of course he didn't. Atlanta was work. Atlanta was a kid's prom send-off. Atlanta was a community event with no Netflix cameras, no Jake Paul, no Tommy Lee, no Flash. Atlanta required showing up for somebody else's win. And men like Ray's husband do not show up for somebody else's win. They show up for somebody else's wife when the lights are loud enough to make them feel borrowed greatness. So he flew to LA. He sat in Celebrity Row. He let the cameras drift past him too. And then he and Claressa spent the entire night not speaking to each other, not laughing, not connecting, not behaving like two adults who actually enjoy each other's company. Because they don't. There is no romance there. There is only a transaction. She gets the optics of a man on her arm. He gets the optics of proximity to fame. And both of them get to perform a relationship for an audience that stopped buying tickets months ago. Watch the footage. 2 people with their phones up. 2 people staring at screens instead of each other. 2 people performing togetherness for Instagram while emotionally sitting in 2 completely different time zones. That isn't love. That isn't even chemistry. That's a co-branded vacancy posing as a partnership. And the whole time, let me say this slowly, Ronda Rousey was making her MMA return downstairs in the cage. 17 seconds. That's all the legend needed to remind the building who actually built this genre of women's combat. 17 seconds of real greatness, while 2 rows up, a woman who calls herself the greatest of all time was filming her own attendance, because nobody else would. The symbolism wrote itself in permanent ink. Now pull the lens back further, because the bigger story, the one nobody is connecting yet, is what MVP just signaled to the entire boxing and MMA ecosystem. Tonight wasn't just a fight card. Tonight was a coronation of a new operating model. Jake Paul's company is no longer dabbling in women's boxing. They are colonizing combat sports. MMA is next. Alicia Baumgardner is being positioned as the franchise face. The Netflix relationship is being deepened, not narrowed. And the talent they choose to elevate from this point forward will be talent that fits their brand temperature: disciplined, promotable, marketable, drama-controlled, professional. Read that list of adjectives again.
Slowly.
Then ask yourself which one Claressa Shields currently fits. That's why the camera moved past her. That isn't a feud anymore. That's an alignment shift. MVP is building the future of women's combat sports, and the future does not have room for a fighter who skips paid obligations to chase married men across the country. The future does not have room for a fighter whose social media has become a 24-hour stream of insecurity, subliminals, and married man cameos. The future does not have room for a fighter who keeps confusing being talked about with being respected. Netflix scanned the row. Netflix saw her. Netflix made a choice. And that choice was the loudest sentence in the entire broadcast. Now here's the layer almost nobody is talking about yet, and this is where the receipts get heavier. Selita Promotions and Win Records were running a real event in Atlanta that same weekend. Real artists. Real family. Real business. Ruben Jr. had a prom send-off, a moment for a young man stepping into a milestone, and the woman who has spent months publicly aligning herself with that camp simply did not show up, did not call in, did not send flowers, did not record a video message, did not do the bare minimum that a self-respecting adult does when she cannot physically attend a family event for people who have been pouring into her career. She ghosted them for a married man's airline seat. Think about what that signals to every promoter, every label head, every fight camp, every brand partner watching from a distance. It tells them Claressa's word is weather. It blows whichever direction the man wind is moving that day. It tells them her commitments are negotiable depending on whose wedding ring she's currently orbiting. It tells them that if you book her, you are not booking the fighter. You are booking whatever fraction of her attention isn't currently consumed by chasing a husband who already has a household. That is not a brand. That is a risk profile. And the industry can read a risk profile faster than any of us can. That's why Atlanta will remember. That's why Selita's people will remember. That's why Win Records will remember. That's why the kid whose prom moment got upstaged by an adulterous flight will remember. Long after the Netflix cameras pack up. Long after the MMA highlights stop rotating. Long after Ronda Rousey's 17-second masterpiece becomes a Wikipedia footnote. The people Claressa chose against tonight will remember exactly what she chose instead. Now let me say the quiet part with the volume all the way up. There is a specific kind of woman who builds her entire public identity around a man who does not legally belong to her. There is a specific kind of woman who needs the world to know, every single day, that she has him. Not because she actually has him, but because the having of him is the only currency she trusts anymore. Her belts don't satisfy her. Her bank account doesn't satisfy her. Her records don't satisfy her. The applause doesn't satisfy her. The only thing that satisfies her is the daily reminder that somebody's husband chose to sit next to her in public. That is not power. That is a hostage situation she is volunteering for. And the cruelest twist of the entire saga is that the man she keeps parading isn't even loyal to her. He is loyal to the lights. He is loyal to the proximity. He is loyal to whichever woman currently has the bigger purse and the louder microphone. The moment her star dims, and tonight Netflix dimmed it for her in front of millions, that man will float to the next bright thing. Men like him always do. They are not partners. They are parasites with passports. Watch what happens next. Watch how quickly his presence beside her becomes inconsistent. Watch how quickly the cameras he chased start chasing someone else. Watch how quickly the wife he keeps disrespecting becomes the only woman in his life with actual standing once the spotlight finds a different stage. Men like Ray's husband are never the love story. They are the cautionary tale, wearing a fitted cap. And here's the update I'm hearing from inside the industry tonight. And pay attention, because this is the 5% of new information you're not going to find anywhere else yet. Word is, MVP and Netflix have been quietly aligning on an expanded women's combat division for the next broadcast cycle. The list of fighters being courted for that expansion has been circulating. Alicia is on it. A handful of MMA crossovers are on it. Claressa's name? Not on the document. Not even in the margins. Sources close to the production say her name was raised early and quietly removed because, and this is the phrase that keeps coming back, she is bringing too much personal noise for the brand we're building. Too much personal noise. That's the language. That's the verdict. And it explains every camera angle from Saturday night. Now let me hit you with the angle nobody else is touching. Because there's a second story unfolding underneath the first one, and it has nothing to do with boxing. The wife. Ray's wife. The woman who has been quietly raising the family while her husband chases shutter clicks. She didn't say a word. She didn't tweet. She didn't post. She didn't have to. Because the universe handled it for her on a Saturday night, in front of millions on a Netflix live stream, with a camera operator who simply chose not to linger. Her revenge is being written in real time by a Jake Paul promotional empire, a Netflix production crew, and a phone camera her husband's mistress cannot put down. The wife wins by simply existing, still standing, still legally his, still the woman whose name appears on documents Claressa will never get her hands on. Every party Claressa was supposed to embarrass tonight ended up embarrassing her instead. And that is the entire architecture of karma. It does not announce itself. It does not issue press releases. It does not get into Twitter arguments. It simply rearranges the seating chart, dims the right lights, points the camera at someone else, and lets the universe do the rest. Now here's the receipts piece I want you to lock onto. Because there is a specific moment in the broadcast that nobody is highlighting yet, and once you see it, you'll never unsee it. Watch where Claressa's phone is pointed. Then watch where the Netflix camera is pointed. The gap between those two angles, that exact gap, is the distance between who Claressa thinks she is and who the industry has decided she actually is. That gap is the entire story. That gap is the verdict. That gap is the future. She just signed up for the moment she chose LA over Atlanta, optics over obligation, married man theater over family loyalty. The seat was real. The man was borrowed. The relevance was imaginary. And the camera, in the end, told the only truth that mattered. Here's the part I've been holding back. The part nobody else is willing to say out loud. There is a moment in every public figure's career where the universe hands them one last clean exit. A moment where the lights flicker just long enough for them to read the warning and recalibrate. Tonight was Claressa's flicker. The Netflix snub was the warning. The Atlanta no-show was the cost. The married man cameo was the receipt. The empty cameras in Celebrity Row were the verdict. The only question left is whether she has anyone around her honest enough to translate what just happened. Because right now her circle appears to consist of yes men, hype women, and a married passenger who profits from her self-destruction. Nobody in that ecosystem is going to sit her down and tell her she just traded a paid Atlanta engagement for a televised humiliation on a national streaming platform. Nobody in that ecosystem is going to tell her MVP isn't adversarial anymore. MVP is dismissive. And dismissive is so much worse than adversarial. She got archived tonight. And here's the final cut, the deepest one. The one that should rattle anyone still holding on to sympathy for this storyline. The woman Claressa keeps subliminally swinging at Alicia got the camera, got the introduction, got the brand, got the future, got the respect, got the alignment. Without firing a single shot back. Without recording a single response video. Without addressing Claressa's name in a single interview. Alicia simply showed up, did her job, fulfilled her contracts, kept her hands clean, and let the lens do the arguing for her. That is how a professional dismantles an antagonist. Not with words, with presence, with consistency, with the kind of quiet excellence that producers reward, and networks elevate. Alicia didn't beat Claressa tonight. Netflix did. MVP did. The room did. The seating chart did. The camera operator, who chose not to linger, did. Every executive who decided which names to announce and which names to skip did. The wife Ray's husband abandoned didn't have to lift a finger either. And here's another thread that's quietly tightening around this whole picture. Because while Claressa was busy filming her own attendance, the social media analytics in her camp told a story that nobody on her team is willing to share with her. The engagement on her posts from that night was lower than the engagement on her posts from a random Tuesday 2 months ago. The room she walked into didn't translate into a single viral moment for her. Not one clip. Not one quote. Not one reaction shot circulating among the boxing pages. While Alicia's introduction is being looped, captioned, and posted across thousands of accounts, Claressa's seat is being looped only by Claressa herself. That is what dead relevance looks like in 2026. It doesn't crash. It just stops echoing. And the people watching from a distance, the promoters, the networks, the brand executives, the gym owners, the broadcasters, they all noticed. They all noticed who got the introduction. They all noticed who didn't. They all noticed who showed up. They all noticed who skipped. They all noticed who brought a married man into a televised room as if that was a flex and not a confession. They are taking notes. And those notes are going into the conversations Claressa will never be invited to. Take one last look at the footage. Look at her face when she realizes the camera moved past her. Look at the way she suddenly buries herself in her phone like the screen is going to save her. Look at the man beside her checking his own phone, already calculating his next move, already mentally drafting his exit from the relevance ship before it fully sinks. She came to be seen. She left having been skipped. And somewhere in a quieter zip code, a wife she's never met just watched the entire broadcast, set her phone face down on the nightstand, sipped something warm, and smiled, because the universe handled it for her without her ever having to lift a finger. That's the story. That's the receipt. That's the verdict. And the wildest part? It's not even over. Because once an industry decides to archive you, the next 90 days tell you everything. Watch who calls. Watch who doesn't. Watch which doors open. Watch which ones stop returning emails. Watch how quickly the man beside her starts finding excuses to be photographed somewhere else. Watch how quickly her own team starts leaking that the LA trip was always part of the plan. The universal language of a publicist trying to mop up a televised humiliation in real time. You wanted to be seen, Claressa. The camera saw you. It just decided you weren't the story. And that, right there, that single editorial decision in a Netflix control room on a Saturday night in Los Angeles might be the loudest thing ever said about a fighter who never threw a punch on the card. It was a verdict written in silence, broadcast in plain sight, and signed off on by everyone who matters in the room she thought she still belonged in. The room she walked into to be celebrated turned into the room that quietly retired her. And every single person watching from home, even the ones who didn't realize what they were watching, became a witness to her erasure. That is the kind of moment a career never fully recovers from. Not because of what was said, but because of what was left unsaid, on purpose, by people who used to put her name in lights. Remember that. Because that gap, that pause, that one missing introduction, that's the sound an empire makes when it decides you're no longer worth the airtime. And the one person who still doesn't grasp it is the one who flew furthest.